And now we're going to do another review from the new series. Today we're going to review Amy's Choice. Amy's Choice was kind of an easy one to choose when the mission for today was let's showcase some good episodes. And Amy's Choice was probably easy to do. It works in the same way as Blink. It's a wild ride where you're just trying to figure out what's going on, but it's a lot different. Where Blink was more lines of basically a horror story with slight time travel elements, this one features pretty much no time travel, but features something that easily could have been screwed up: dream worlds. Dream worlds are something that I don't know. I don't sigh at. They're one of those sci-fi cliches that you have to do well, and it's easy to botch simply because with dream worlds you can just kind of forget logic and do whatever the fuck you really want. Here the writer realizes that no, we need to set some rules. First off, he goes with the classic Nightmare on Elm Street take of possibly dying in your dreams. If you die in the dream, you live, but if you die in real life, well, then you die. Yes, there's no screwing with these laws here. And another thing it does is introduce a great villain. A villain that has some limited use, granted, but I'll get into that once I explain the plot a little more, if you people don't mind me exploring the plot. Suffice to say, this one's really tough, and it might be riddled with spoilers. I don't know if I really want to how much I'm going to spoil this. It's gonna really differ, so if you feel like I am spoiling it too much, I am sorry. This is your final spoiler warning, I guess. So, as I continue, it opens up a few years in the future with Rory and Amy living in Leavenworth. Rory, who is a doctor wearing the most bitchin' ponytail in the history of bitchin' ponytails, is about to have a baby with Amy, who is pregnant. We enter the doctor, and then of course they fall asleep, wake up in the TARDIS, and they fall asleep, wake up in the TARDIS, where they're a little confused, and then the whole explanation is basically explained to them by the Dream Lord. His gambit is simple. They're currently in between two worlds. One is real, one's a dream. They have to figure out which one's real before they inevitably die in the quote-unquote real world. That's essentially the plot, trying to distinguish reality from dream and make it out alive. What a very interesting idea. And trust me, they don't screw up or drop the ball on this in any form. It begins to be not only a fight for their lives, but somewhat of a really well thought out psychological piece. Because what we will find out, and like I said, here's the spoiler warning, we find out the Dream Lord's essentially a dark part of the Doctor manifested from psychic pollen, and he was basically putting the three of them through a choice between two dreams, essentially just making them choose to go through hell. The reason why this is happening is simple. Psychic pollen's just doing what nature basically made it for. Attack people and feed on their dark side and make it real. I love the explanation how it barely affected Rory and Amy because, well, they're still good, pure people, and the Doctor, being over 900 years old, has some chips on his shoulder that he probably wouldn't want to fully deal with or see come to life in any real way. I like this one because it's one of those few episodes where I don't shrug at the love triangle dynamic, or at least the light way they put it. See, one thing I was really getting sick of with Series 6, mostly the premiere, is they kept playing with the love triangle idea. Triangle idea, and really making you wonder, is she going to leave Rory or blah blah blah? And I just didn't like it. I got so sick of it at a point where I just rolled my eyes when they simply said no, they're staying together. And if they actually, nutted up and did it, I wouldn't have cared, because it just would have been delaying the quote unquote inevitable. But here it works. More importantly, with the scene between the Dream Lord and Amy, where she simply asked him, which one would you choose, Rory or the Doctor? And I love the way they play it. Toby Jones is simply playing this is like it's a simple choice, while Amy's looking at it like it's the scariest question she's ever been asked. Truly a very interesting aspect. One thing about this is, towards the end, up until we find out what the situation truly is, you can't really tell which is the dream and which is real. And I love that. And I love that aspect. It's very... The thing about stories where it takes place in a dream world and half of it takes place in the real world is most of the time they basically spell out the fact that what is real and what's fake, and it's just a goofy roller coaster ride to figure out how to fight back or get rid of whatever the hell's causing this. Sorry to spell it out so cleanly, but that is what happens. It's kind of wild. So it's why this is really tough to do, because it's easy to fall into the pratfalls and do all the cliches and really tire out the trope. Here they managed to basically make you believe any of these could be the real world. And you're kind of generally shocked when you realize that neither of them were the real world and was all just an insane game played up by the Dream Lord. An excellent story, that's for sure. Let's look at characters. Let's look at the Doctor's psyche here. I love the revelation that the Dream Lord's basically his dark side, only because continuity-wise, back during the Sixth Doctor's era, a character known as the Valeyard was an opponent of the Doctor, but would turn out to be a possible incarnation of him after one of his last regenerations, who's turned evil. This is definitely playing on the idea that this part does exist, and it's growing stronger and stronger, and the Doctor could become the Valeyard. If they're going to actually go through with it, who knows? But I would love to see how, and it's really good to see that they're not just simply forgetting this, especially with Colin's era being that era that, well, tends to be regarded as the beginning of the end of the show up until the show got revived. But let's move on to the Dream Lord. He's excellently played by Toby Jones here. He's basically a smug bastard, and he's completely playing it straight. And the one thing that makes him great is the fact that he looks at the Master... And the reason why he's the best is he looks at the Doctor and looks down on him. See, most villains who don't truly know the Doctor or think they have the upper hand only underestimate him, because they think they truly have him beat. Here, he looks down on all his ideas and tricks, knowing that he can be beat, and simply laughs at the idea that the Doctor's going to try and defeat him. Kind of like, it's, again, really playing with the idea that technically the Doctor doesn't even think he can beat himself in his own game. I love that idea, and it works perfectly with the revelation. Let's move on to Amy and Rory. I love Rory. I love how Rory's simply acting here. He's honestly hoping that the world that's in the tiny village with a quiet life and a baby on the way, with yet again a bitchin' ponytail, it is the real life, and he's stuck on this. And I really like the idea that he just wants a quiet life. It really speaks to him. He's kind of looking at this life with the Doctor out of so far what he's dealt with, and said, who really wants to deal with this? Obviously his fiancée does, but still, all he wants is a quiet life. And he apparently just can't seem to have that even in the quiet village, once we realize the old people at the old folks' home are aliens that shoot very deadly acid that will kill you on contact. Goodbye, Rory, for this episode. One thing about Amy is she's just as confused on which one's the real world. With the Doctor, here's how to contrast it. Rory really hopes and thinks that the Quiet Village is the real world, while the Doctor obviously hopes that the village is the dream and them on the TARDIS is real. Amy's basically confused on what's real and what's not, and again, I like that. But eventually, it doesn't even become a choice of what world she'd rather live in. It's who she'd rather be with, Rory or the Doctor. And that's where the episode, of course, gets its title. It doesn't seem phoned in either. Once you realize that it's no longer a choice of what life she wants, but who she'd rather live the life with, it really gives something big. And once she sees Rory die in one of the quote unquote dream worlds, she essentially, with child, mind you, commits suicide. By the way, the Doctor just goes with it. I like that aspect. You can look at it as simply a sign of friendship, or the fact that he's entirely afraid of Amy. Either way, it works. And it sells an idea that, no, I'm sorry, there's no way you can make me think that she'll just leave Rory in the end. Without Rory becoming a supervillain and trying to kill the Doctor. Which, let's face it, would be fucking awesome! But, yeah, no Rory is Doctor Doom today. We're just gonna go off and to the sunset to our next adventure, featuring evil lizard people. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with this one yet again. It's completely played straight. There's no real problems. The atmosphere is great. And again, the villain played by Toby Jones is one of the greatest performances in the show I've seen. It's one of those I definitely recommend you can just check out on your own. No continuity there's no continuity required to understand what's going on. It's simply a fun roller coaster ride with a nice relation and a good twist that I've obviously spoiled. Again, watching it unfold is half the fun. Me explaining it may have ruined part of it, but trust me, it's hopefully will still be there. I'll see you guys next time.